And now, moving forward, in our next session, we will talk about e-commerce for many Indias, enabling consumer and brand diversity. This session is in partnership with Flipkart Ads. Joining us for the same is Mr. Sankalp Mehrotra, a digital business leader with over 17 years of experience across APAC. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Mr. Sankalp Mehrotra, MMA India Board Member, Vice President of Monetization, Flipkart.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Great to see so many faces together in a room, right? Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about how e-commerce is changing the landscape in India, some key drivers for growth, right? And how that is impacting consumer journeys and how that is impacting brands. So there are just a couple of things that I'd like you to take away from the discussion today, right? Like I said, I'll talk of growth enablers, I'll talk of changing consumer journeys, and I'll talk of how you can create impact with things that we're doing at Flipkart, right? Amit, I love the themes that you have presented, and I hope some of them at least will be covered during the course of this presentation. Let me just start by where we are at this point of time, right? We are already the third largest online shopper base in the world, right? There is obviously some COVID-fueled acceleration that has happened. The market is even today a single-digit percentage when it comes to penetration, right? So the headroom for growth is actually very, very high. The headroom for growth here is quite tremendous. And what are the factors that are really fueling this growth, right? Think of a couple of things. The first is data ubiquity. All of us have data, right? Data is accessible to everyone. The second is digital natives are coming of age, right? So they are part of the key consuming segment at this point of time. And perhaps one of the most important things is the rise of the middle class. So in 2018, there were approximately 150 million households that you would classify as middle class, right? Fast forward to 2030, the number is set to grow to about 300 million. And that is where a lot of key consumption is happening, right? So think of this as one of the biggest factors that is propelling the growth of e-commerce. And if you think about where this growth is coming from, right? It is Bharat which is really turbocharging the growth. So if you see the last 2 years, 80% of new customers that have come onto e-commerce have come from tier 2 and beyond, right? And that is where we're seeing 2.5 to 3x GMV growth also, right? And that is where a lot of, or let me just put it this way. If you look at e-commerce across any geography in the world, there are 3 stages. The first stage is that of cautious early adoption. The second stage is when some massification happens. And the third stage is when there's growing stickiness, right? We clearly are in phase 2. At this point of time, over the next few years, we'll move to phase 3, which is of growing stickiness. And it is likely to be turbocharged by tier 2 and beyond, right? We've always looked at internet as a great homogenizer, right? All of us believe that people across geographies are the same. And there are some very interesting trends that we've been observing. Just going back to my previous slide, if you look at the sell price of goods across categories like handsets, across categories like electronics, fashion, there's no difference between, let's say, metros and tier 2 and beyond. In categories like personal care, we actually see that the ASP, or average selling price of goods, in tier 2 is actually higher than even metros. And we believe that internet is the homogenizer, which is actually bringing everyone, to the same level. But is it really? Is it only that the social reality of people is the same, whereas their lived reality is different? And if you just double click on this, rather than talking about cohorts or only demographic-based categorizations of consumers, there are a multitude of aspirations and mindsets that we see, right? I'm not going to get too deep into each of these. The nomenclature is self-explanatory. But there are 6 mindsets that we think are what define India today, right? There's global mindset, There are urbanizing aspirers. There are people who are validation seekers. There are what we call as dislocated migrants. There are traditionalists, and there are people who are insular, who completely insular. And for each of these mindsets, there are particular challenges, or there are very, very specific challenges that enable them to shop or that prohibit them to shop online, right? If I look at, let's say, global mindset, they typically look for a very curated kind of an experience. If I look at urban aspirers, they want to fit in. They fear going wrong. Trust can be a challenge for this cohort. If I look at dislocated migrants and validation seekers, language is going to be a challenge. And if I think about traditionalist and insular, it could again be lack of credibility or trust. Now, when you think about all of these mindsets, right, it becomes imperative to build products in a manner that are addressing the challenges that each of these mindset faces. And to that end, there are multiple things that we are doing as an organization. And I would just like to club whatever we're doing into 3 cohorts, right? There are things that we are doing to attract, let's say, newer customers onto the platform. There are things that we are doing to assure newer customers who are coming onto the platform. And there are things that we are doing to assist them in their shopping journeys. And if I think of assistance as a node, we've actually developed, Flipkart now is available in 11 languages. It's 11 languages available at this point of time. Voice, and I think that's a point that Amit also made, right? Voice is something that has been enabled on our platform. If I think of trust as an issue, we launched Shopsy about a couple of months back. I think by the end of the year, we'll be at about 100 million customers, right? Which is experiencing a very rapid growth. So that is how we are addressing the trust challenge. And when I think about, let's say, Assure, we've launched video commerce, right? And we built a very cool feature, which is called a haggle bot. So the customer can actually just speak to the influencer and figure out the right price for the good that they want to buy. Similarly, we've launched feeds, where users can actually look at their influencers and buy that kind of a look. So again, going back to the point that I'd made, what we're talking of are addressing mindset challenges, and the products that we are building are enabling us to overcome those mindsets. Let me just talk about how consumer journeys are now changing, right? I think if I were to simply put the biggest change that e-commerce has enabled, it is the collapse of shopping funnels, right? Think about it. Earlier, you would think about an exposure being seen on television. The consumer might see an ad in a newspaper, perhaps listen to something on the radio, go to the shop and add things to their cart, right? All of that journey can be completed on a single platform at this point of time. So when it comes to product discovery, like a wide variety of products can be discovered on a single platform. When it comes to product search and feature comparison, you can do that. Going back to my point about how we are assisting customers, so a platform like ours enables affordability in a very meaningful fashion for a lot of customers who are new to the platform. So financing is also something that can be done, and eventually the conversion and purchase, right? And the other key thing that is happening right now is how search is getting verticalized. Think of all of us as customers, right? Today, when I think about my music, I'll perhaps go to a Spotify. When I think about food, I'll go to a Swiggy or a Zomato. When I'm thinking of services, I'll go to an urban company, right? And when you're thinking product, people will come to a destination such as ours. Now, this change is manifesting in very, very large numbers. In the US, 70% of product queries have already migrated off horizontals to commerce platforms. In India, that number is between 30 to 35%, and we expect that number to hit 50% in the coming year or so. Right? So verticalization of search is another key change that is happening, because of which, as customers are moving, brands are moving too. Now, if you think about discovery, right? Discovery also has become very, very heterogeneous right now. This is a simplification. Think of apps being on one axis where the gateway is controlled by, let's say, the App Store. Think of horizontal search engines, which are enabling a lot of things beyond product searches also. And then you have multiple content sites, etc., through where you're doing discovery. Now, where do commerce platforms sit in? What is the implication of this for a brand, right? Think of these two dimensions where commerce platforms become imperative for brands to participate on. Now, what are the kind of numbers that we're talking about, right? About 500 million people will be transacting online by 2025. If I only look at product transactors, that number is going to be 400 million. At this point of time, also, the number is north of about 170, 180 million. Add service transactors to it, the number will breach a 550, 600 million, which is significant enough, or at this point of time only, it is large enough for any brand to fulfill any objectives that they want to attain. And these changes are manifesting, in terms of, let's say, very, very large numbers now. There are multiple reports that are out there in the market, right, in terms of what is the size of the digital addicts. We believe digital last year in the country was already at a 35,000 odd crores. It will be 50% of the addicts, and I'll stick my neck out. Over the next 2 years, we expect digital to become 50% of the addicts. And of that, commerce advertising this year, I'm not talking of something that is going to happen in the future. This year, commerce advertising is going to be north of $1 billion. And that is larger than what is being spent on video, right? That is how big commerce advertising has already become. And over the next few years, it's only going to grow larger than this. Now, just talking of how you can create some impact with Flipkart, right? The one thing that we do well is understand our customer journeys, right? Users take a lot of actions on Flipkart. Like I said, they will come search for products, they will give ratings, and they will read reviews. There are multiple affordability options that we provide to users on our platform. And we are able to churn all of these actions into creating cohorts, into building insights, right? Which could be something like a gadget geek, or it could be, clustering various kinds of households, allowing brands to engage with the customer, the kind of customer that they want to engage with. And just taking this point a little further, right? Every time you think about customer engagement, there's a fallacy to think of intent as a singular node, or to think of intent as a monolith. It never is, right? The one thing, or we pride ourselves in our ability to do hyper-personalization at scale. And that is because of our ability to understand consumer intent. And I see that intent as a spectrum, right? There is strong intent. Strong intent is when you know what you want to shop, you might have browsed those products, added them to their cart. That is an example of strong intent. There is latent intent. Now, what is latent intent? Imagine someone having bought a mobile phone, right? Cases and covers are most likely to be the next thing that they'll want to purchase, or it could be earphones, etc. That is an example of latent intent. Nascent intent is when you, let's say, buy toys, perhaps diapers is one thing that you want to see, right? And the last thing is new intent. I think commerce platforms do a great job in building categories. They do a very good job in bringing some serendipity in terms of ensuring that customers are able to see things that they did not know existed. And I can name a few brands. A brand like Xiaomi started their journey with us. A brand like Mama started their journey with us. A brand like Boat started their journey with us, right? And that is all a part of new intent. So rather than thinking of intent as a monolith or a singular node, it is not. Your ability to cluster intent into multiple buckets is what helps you address your customer needs better. And just this understanding of intent allows us, just this understanding of intent allows us to do multiple things, right? There are inorganic interventions that we are able to create across the entire customer journey. There are a bunch of search opportunities that we have. There are display opportunities, etc. I'm talking of a few key things, like we recently launched something called a product finder. If this works, which it is not, but essentially, what you're able to do is you ask the consumer some questions, and basis their answers, you're able to recommend the right kind of product for them, right? We are able to run ads in 11 languages now, so you can reach your customer across any geography in a native language. You're able to also participate in the consumer journey on the product page. So these are all things that we've enabled, that allows brands to engage very, very meaningfully with their customers. It's not just limited to brands that are on platform. There are things that we are enabling right now for brands that are off platform too. So this is something I think we're done with Skoda a couple of months back, where there was an entire brand store that was built out for them, which delivered great engagement and great results. Similarly, something like sampling. Think about it. Sampling as a journey is today broken for a lot of brands. You give out products, you really don't know what the consumer feedback is, and essentially what you'll want to see is whether there's any repeat that is happening for the samples that you've given out. We are able to do things like identify the right consumer in the right geography, basis their behaviors. You can actually reach out to these customers again, get feedback on what they thought about your product, also provide them, let's say, discount for the next purchase that they need to make, right? This is also a node that has been enabled. And recently, we partnered with Criteo to launch an off-platform solution that allows brands, to again target the customer basis understanding of intent off-platform too, not just on Flipkart, but you could do this off-platform too. This really is the end of my presentation, and I'll just summarize. I had promised you that I'll leave you with just 2 or 3 things, and these are the 3 things that I'd like you to take away, which is, again, stating the obvious, but Bharat is turbocharging growth. Focus not just on the demographics, but focus on the motivators, the challenges that your customers have. See how is it that it is being addressed. See how is it that the products that we've curated allow us to enable those journeys for you. And the collapse of shopping funnels. It is something which is very important. Consumer journeys are beginning and ending on a single platform. And last but not the least is things that we do. We tend to refer to that internally as what we call as DUS, which is disruptive, unique, and scalable opportunities to engage, build your brand, and convert your customers. That's it from me. Thanks a lot. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you very much.